Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA video for Monday, December 14th. There's a 10-game slate tonight, which is actually a larger slate than we usually see for a Monday. A lot of the games, excuse me, a lot of the games have totals right around the 200 range, so there are a lot of options that we can look at. The two games that stand out the most are going to be the two that I'm looking for to pay up for some of the studs. The first one is the Portland-New Orleans game, and the two studs that I'm talking about here are Damian Lillard and Anthony Davis. And the reason why I like these two guys is, there's something that I've been noticing, and I wanted to kind of let you guys in on a little secret that a lot of the top players have been using lately. When you're looking to pay up for studs, it's a good idea to pay up for a couple studs that are in the same game. And there's a couple reasons for this. You're hoping that the game becomes one that goes up and down like this one should be, and is very high scoring. When you have a high scoring game that's back and forth at the end, it tends to be the studs who have the ball in their hand. So you're getting a good game out of them all along. And then in the last 5 or 6 minutes, these are the guys that tend to do, most of the playmaking, most of the shot making, most of the stats that get added are added in these last couple minutes. So these guys can go from having a 40 or 50 point game to like a 60 or 65 point game, because late in the game, especially a guy like Damian Lillard, his usage rate goes from the 25-30% that it normally is up to like 40% towards the end of the game. He basically has the ball in his hand all the time. He's the guy who's taking all the big shots. He's the guy who, they're trying to run off screens, get him open, run the pick and rolls. So he's either scoring or getting the assist on a lot of these plays late in the game. So when you have these close back and forth games that go on late, you tend to see the studs or the guys who have the high usage rate, really get a little bit of a bump up. We saw this last week. A lot of the guys who had a big night the other day had both Harden and John Wall when the Houston team went up against Washington the other day. If you had Harden and Wall, they both put up like 50, 60, 70 fantasy points. I think Harden had on the day. You got like 120-something fantasy points out of those two guys. If you can round out the rest of that roster with some of the top value guys on the day, guys that can get you, 25 to 30 points for like $4,000 or $5,000 on DraftKings, you were able to build a roster that was going to get you somewhere between 290 to 325, 330 points and put you up towards the top of the GPPs and definitely double you up and hit up in all your cash games. So some people like to, take the best options on the day. I like it when I'm making rosters, if I can pair my best options who I like that are in the same game. Using Wall and Harden together was a situation that worked out well for us. And I think tonight is going to be a similar situation with, Portland going up against New Orleans. New Orleans is not very good at guarding point guards, so I think this is a great spot for Damian Lillard. And at the same time, you're starting to get Anthony Davis playing a lot better. So I think if you go with Lillard and Davis tonight as the two guys that you're paying up for, yes, it's expensive. It only leaves you about $30,000 to fill out the other 6 spots. But you could find 5 or 6 guys in that $5,000 range, or 1 or 2 $4,000 punt plays and fit in another $7,000 or $8,000 guy with them, and a couple of those $5,000 guys, and you could wind up with a roster that can get you over 275 points, which should be enough to get you into the GPP money and also give you a nice cash in all your 50-50s and your double ups. So those are the studs that I'm really looking at tonight. The other stud who I think you always got to consider is James Harden. He's going up against Denver, high-paced game. Denver gives up a lot of points basically to everybody, at almost every position right now. So I think Harden is probably the other guy. That game has a little bit more blowout risk. I don't know if it's as close, but again, even in a blowout risk, we still like the team that is the favorite team, because if there's a blowout, that still means that they put up an absolute ton of points. And whenever Houston's putting up a ton of points, that James Harden is usually one of the guys that's, intimately involved in that scoring. So as far as studs go tonight, Lillard, Brow, and Harden are probably the 3 guys who I'm going to be willing to pay up for. Now, as far as glue guys go, the guys that are, in that $5,000 to $7,000 range that can help, get you that 5-6 times value and give you that big score that you want. There's a couple guys at the center position that I think we can look at. Brook Lopez is a huge part of that Nets team, and his price is getting a little bit high, but I still think he's able to pay off value. I think he can get you around 40 points tonight. He's like 72 or 7,400 on DraftKings. So 40 points would be a pretty solid 5.5 to 6x return for him. And he always has the ability to go higher. If you look in his game logs, he does have some, 6 and 7 times value kind of games, which is, something that can help you win a tournament. His matchup against Vucevic is also another guy that I like on the other side of that. Vucevic is a little bit cheaper. I like him a little bit less than I like Lopez, but he is somebody who's been a big part of what Orlando has been doing lately. So I think Vucevic is another guy that I really like, and I think could be up there towards the top. Two other centers who I have my eye on. Dwight Howard has been playing really well lately and has a pretty good matchup against Denver, who struggled to stop centers this year as well. I think you can look at Howard again. He had a big game last time out and is definitely somebody who I really like to roll into my rosters. The other guy that I'm looking at is Al Horford, and the reason for it, it's not a great matchup against Miami. Miami plays a little bit of a slower pace. They're a pretty decent defensive team, but Horford has been putting up some decent numbers, and his price has come down. He's only $6,500, so you're getting a big discount on him versus some of these other guys who are like $1,000 more. And I think he can give you a really nice return tonight in the 35 to 40 point range. And again, that would be 5.5, 6 times value, which would be exactly what you need to, stay on pace to cash in some of these tournaments. Some other guys that I like as glue guys here. Wes Matthews is still pretty cheap. He's been playing more minutes. He's been looking for a shot. He's been scoring more. So Wes Matthews in that 5K range, I think, is a good deal, especially if we have Darren Williams out again tonight. If Darren Williams is out again tonight and with Chandler Parsons still not 100%, they're really looking for guys that can put the ball in the basket in Dallas. And I think Wes Matthews is one of those guys who's been picking up the slack lately. So he's definitely somebody else that I think we can consider. Another guy who I really like is Kenneth Faried from Denver. Now, Faried is somebody who's had some pretty good numbers lately. He's playing in a paced-up game, which is, frankly, the way that he likes to play. He likes to get up and down. He likes to grab rebounds. He likes to finish in the open court. So a game where, you can kind of expect it to go back and forth like this Houston-Denver game should be is another game where I think you can target Faried. His price is still kind of cheap as well. He's only like $5,900, I think, over on DraftKings. So I'm expecting at least 30 fantasy points, if not more, out of him tonight. And, he always has the ability to go big because he gets you block shots. He gets you rebounds. He's just such a good hustle guy that I think he's going to be in a really good spot. Plus, Houston has been struggling against power forwards pretty much all season. So the matchup on paper is not bad for him either. So I do like Kenneth Faried as another one of those glue guys that's going to be rounding out a lot of my rosters. Now, as for the cheapies, if you're going to be paying up for guys like Brown and Lillard or Harden, or even some of these centers that we mentioned that are around the 7K range, we're going to need some cheap guys to round out those rosters. So there's a couple guys that I'm looking at. Tony Allen has been out for the Memphis Grizzlies, and Zebo, for some reason, is not starting right now. He's coming off the bench, I guess, to give him more of a chance to score with the second unit and get a little bit of a better matchup. So two guys who have been going nuts with that situation lately have been Matt Barnes and Jeff Green. Now, Barnes and Green are both below 5K. The other day, I think Barnes put up like 44 fantasy points on DraftKings, and Jeff Green had like 35 himself. So if you can get two guys below 5K that are going to go, 8 or 9X or 7 or 8X value on you, I think those are guys that you got to look at. You got to respect that they're able to do that. And if those two guys can do that again, they did it last night. If they can do it again today, or even somewhat similar, if they can get you over 30 points for below 5K, which I don't think is out of the question for either one of these guys if Allen's out, and the two of them are starting with Zebo coming off the bench, I think these are two of those cheap guys that you got to look to roll in there to round out your rosters. We also have a couple injury situations that are going to make some guys, viable options. You have Raymond Felton, who had a huge game the other day with Darren Williams out. Word is that I saw this morning is that there's a good chance Williams might not play again tonight. So if D. Will is out, I will be rolling Felton in almost all my lineups. Now, remember, on DraftKings, Felton is actually listed as a shooting guard right now because he was the starting shooting guard alongside D. Williams earlier in the year before Matthews came back. So you can actually roll him out there as a cheap option below 5K at the shooting guard spot. He was like 4,400 or 4,200 the other day and put up 45 fantasy points as the starting point guard with Williams out. So if Williams is out, you're probably going to see 30-plus minutes from Felton, and he should get you a nice return on your investment. The point guard option that I like on the cheap side today is going to be Jameer Nelson. You have Emmanuel Mudiay, who is definitely out tonight, so that means Nelson's going to be picking up the slack there. It also probably ticks up all those other guard options that they have. Guys like Gary Harris you can look at. Will Barton, who I love, but is getting a little bit expensive. He's no longer a great value. I think he's up to like 62 or 6,400. So you're going to need like 35 to 40 fantasy points out of him, which, again, he's been able to do lately. He has been putting up those kind of numbers, so it's not out of the question. I just don't know if I love him as much at that price, but I do love Jameer Nelson. I think you're going to see Probably 30 minutes, if not more, out of Nelson tonight. And I think at 30 minutes, he can get you, 25 to 30 fantasy points for around 4K, which is going to be a really nice return on investment. The one other guy I want to mention is somebody who is a little riskier, but I love rolling him out there when the situation arises. Whenever you have Nerlens Noel out, you usually have Jeremy Grant playing a bigger role. And now that Covington is back, the role that Grant winds up playing is the power forward role, which is when I like to roll him out there. The reason for that is he's a guy that's only going to score a couple points, but he gets you some defensive stats. He's going to get you big minutes. And when he's playing power forward, his rebound numbers are up there too. So he's a cheap guy that is a double-double threat. If he gets you that double-double, he's going to smash value 6 or 7 times value easy. And if he adds in some of those defensive stats, he does have the upside to go even bigger than that. Now, I never loved the matchup for Philly. Philly is not a very good team. But if you can get a guy like Grant pretty cheap who's going to be getting, increased minutes and a bigger role, I definitely think that's the spot that I want to roll him out there. So after looking at the DraftKings situation tonight, those are the guys that I'm looking at. Those are the guys that I think are in good spots. And, those are the guys that I'm going to be rolling out in most of my lineups. Now, remember, the injury situation is huge for NBA DFS. So make sure to check back close to lineup lock, see if there's any other guys that we're not even thinking about now that could be out later. And if you do get a good spot, those are the guys that we want. Joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.